We do 30,000 carriage tours every year in Charleston. So.
Wow. Does your company, this company alone?
No,
Or
5 companies.
Oh, okay.
Aladdin, yes. Aladdin is who found the lamp. And Aladdin rubbed the lamp, and the genie came out and gave Aladdin 3 wishes. If I had Aladdin's lamp, I'd make a wish, and here's where I'd be. Nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina in the morning. Aladdin. In the year 1670 is when the first settlers got here. They were on a ship called the Carolina. They had last stopped in Barbados. And they first went 3.5 miles up the Ashley River to our west. And they came down here in 1680 because they thought the peninsula would be a little easier to defend with water on 3 sides. For the early English settlers, their biggest enemies were the Spanish and the French. Also the Seminole Indians, they caused a lot of problems. This is Charleston Gaslight Company's first power plant, built in 1853. If you have the gas lights on your home or business, you have to keep them lit all the time. It's like a pilot light, and it's leaking a little bit of natural gas whenever there's not a flame that can catch it. Good job! This is Charleston's first, or token, Irish pub, Tommy Collins. At the end of the block, Charleston's first speakeasy. Prohibition in South Carolina began in 1893. It's because of Pitchfork and Ben Tillman. The speakeasies were originally known as blind tigers because they'd sell you a ticket to come see the blind tiger, and then there was no blind tiger. And then they'd give you a free drink when you came inside. Step high. You see these brackets in the wall over here? Those are earthquake stabilizing rods put in after the Great Earthquake of 1886.
I think that church I turned around the other day, it's off the roof, ain't it?
Yeah, it leans towards the Cooper River, probably maybe from that earthquake and sinking into the soil over the earth. These earthquake rods were used to repair the damage that the earthquake caused. And each one goes in one side and connects to another one coming from the other side. Each night the homeowner would lift up the floorboards and turn a dial a half a degree until the walls were square again. Earthquake stabilizing rods used to repair the damage after the fact. They don't add to the structural integrity of the wall. G. On the right is Philadelphia Alley, which gets its name because the city of Philadelphia gave us all these bricks after a fire in 1815. It was also known as Dueller's Alley because of all the duels that took place here. Dueling was only outlawed statewide in South Carolina in 1881. Before that, it was encouraged because they kept a lot of civil lawsuits out of the courts.
Might help a little bit today.
It would.
That's the camera.
If you and I had some sort of beef with one another, you might challenge me to a duel. I would have accepted because otherwise my reputation takes a huge hit. Before we fought, we'd lay out all the parameters of our fight on paper. What time, where to meet, what to wear, and who could be with us. There's a whole list of things. How far apart we stand. Step G. You usually have 2 people with you if you're fighting in a duel. One was a surgeon, just in case, and the other was a second, a friend of yours that would take your place if for some reason you couldn't participate. Step up! Now if I couldn't participate and my second also decided that he couldn't participate or didn't want to participate, well then they would just send me to the city jail. It doesn't seem like a big deal except for in 137 years that the jail was open, over 10,000 people died there. So your chance of survival is just 1 out of 3, and you might as well take your chances with a bullet in Philadelphia. This is State Street. It was originally Union Street for the Union of England and Scotland. It became State Street in 1815 when they widened the roads 15 feet on either side. Most of the houses on this block burned in the fire of 1796, one of our 5 great fires. So most of these houses rebuilt early 1800s. This is the only one that survived the fire. It survived because of the way it's pushed back off the road. At the time, the most common roof style was a wooden shingle. It's easy to imagine how with wooden shingles, burning embers could be carried by ocean winds down the length of the block. So the wooden shingles are outlawed in the 1840s, and today the most common roof style is a standing seam sheet metal roof made of tin. Step up. The tin roof would have been originally placed right over top of those wooden shingles. These would have originally been businesses downstairs and residences upstairs, made with stucco over brick. The stucco is used to help insulate the brick, insulate the wall, protects the brick. It was also considered more aesthetically pleasing. The stucco wall looked better than brick walls of the early settlers here. Here they've carved the stucco to make it look like stone. And notice this color on the shutters. That turquoise or teal color was real popular in the early 19th century. Because there was so much leftover black artillery paint following the Civil War, they began to mix the black paint with that color until it degraded to what we call Charleston green today. Most of what looks like black on the panels, doors, and ironwork is probably Charleston green. Charleston green is 9 parts black and 1 part yellow. Step up. Now this is Queen Street, but it used to be Dock Street. And if you look to our left, you'll see where the dock used to be. Today it's Waterfront Park. You used to be able to sail all the way up the road here. This is a little creek. It's been filled in. About a third of downtown Charleston today is man-made from landfill.
You can build stuff on here.
What?
Build a bunch of stuff on here.
Pretty much. Keep building out like the city of Rome. On the left here is where Joel Roberts Poinsett lived. He was the Secretary of War during the Mexican-American Affair, 1846. Joel Roberts Poinsett went down to Mexico and he came back with the poinsettia. And he lived right there. This house was built in 1796 after that fire. It used to be where this parking lot was until 1974 when the Charleston Preservation Society bought it and moved it over 1 lot. It was also one of the houses that they had to back up 15 feet in 1815 when they widened the road. Back then, if they wanted to move a house, no problem. You just put it up on palmetto logs and you could roll a house down the block, 1 foot per minute. Hey, this is one of our 7 cobblestone streets in town. However, I'd be more accurate if I called this a ballast stone street. These stones were used as ballast in ships coming across the Atlantic. Once they got here, they were filled with goods and supplies, mostly cotton, Carolina gold rice, and they didn't need the extra weight, so they'd use them to pave the roads. They stacked up on East Bay until they became part of the roads. Today, they're all permanently attached because tourists like to take them as souvenirs. So the concrete is holding them in. They're all numbered 1 by 1 too, so they can keep track of them. If you have to do road work here, they lift them up 1 by 1 and they have to place them all back exactly where they got them from. Step up.
Preserving it.
We thought we had trouble working down. Houses the owners are passed down, or they can buy, people can buy these houses?
Yeah, people can buy these houses,
Oh, okay.
sure. If they put on the market. This one's getting some renovations now.
Pricey though.
Right.
Yeah, he paid $1.8 million and up to live downtown. This is 1807 Union Fire Insurance Company. Until 1886, no city fire departments. If you wanted somebody to put the fire out on your house if it was on fire, you'd have to have insurance. And then the insurance company would be the first responders. This is a wind tunnel. Ocean winds is how you stay cool around here in the summer months. This is Broad Street, or the wide, broad path that brought people in from the western rural side of downtown. One of the original roads laid out in town. In front of us is the old Exchange and Customs House, built in 1771. It was the first building built by the British. I'm sorry, it was the last building built by the British. On the rail out front is a perfect example of Charleston's wrought iron work. Wrought iron is made by heating up the iron and pounding on it with a hammer on an anvil until you get all these S and J and C-shaped curves. That's what Charleston's known best for in terms of ironwork. FG. A large majority of the ironwork that was here during the Civil War would have been melted and used for artillery. So what you see here today has mostly been replaced in the last 150 years. If you look in these doorways here, in the doors, they have cast iron. The difference between cast iron and wrought iron is that cast iron is made by melting the iron and pouring it into a mold. That's what New Orleans is known best for. A lot of cast iron balconies in New Orleans, and Montgomery, Mobile, Alabama. On the right, excuse me, on the right side of the road are the oldest English-style row tenements in North America. They're known as Rainbow Row for their pastel colors. They were painted these colors in the 1930s when they were some of the first buildings in town to be renovated. They date back to the 1720s. This is a carriage door with the arched top. This is a perfect example of Charleston's wrought ironwork. All these have a lot of space in the back too for their gardens. Early English settlers here were trying to replace their English garden here in the New World. So you find a lot of the same varieties from one house to the next. The window boxes were originally used to keep the stinky city street smells out of the house. They didn't clean up after the animals back then the way we do now. Also more earthquake rods. You expect to pay between $2 and $9 million to live on Rainbow Row. These are crepe myrtles. That's what Myrtle Beach is named for. Crepe myrtles were imported from China in the 1740s by Andre Michu. He also brought the Chinese tallow tree, the ginkgo tree, the tea olive, and the gardenia, which is named after Alexander Garden. He was from Charleston too.
This is where they had the wall at.
Yeah, right here.
You see the brick right there? I was telling you it's just part of the wall city, very, very original.
In 1704, they built a wall around the first square mile of the city. The easternmost wall was right along East Bay Street here. The bricks in the pavement are marking one of 3 triangular redans that stuck off the side of the wall. And everything on this side of East Bay Street was originally water and marsh. It's all man-made.
When did they start building it up, man-made, or adding?
Oh, around the 1750s. That's when the wall started coming down. To build that up. This building 1800. This is rental property built by Arnoldus Vandross, who was a sea island cotton planter on Edisco Island. 3 separate rental properties here, each sharing a wall with their neighbor. In the early 20th century, colonial revival architecture was really popular, like this one with the dormers. That's taken from the colonial age. The pedimented door, Georgian, the symmetry also Georgian. Oh, you take different parts of the architecture from the last 250 years, put them all together. They call that colonial revival. These are Georgian houses from the 1700s, the time of King George. Georgian houses best known for their wooden pedimented doors and the decorative cornice at the top of the house. Notice the pocket shutters on the inside that fold into the wall. This green one is a Charleston single house, and that's the most common floor plan in town. Single houses are just 1 room wide, and they have a central hallway that divides the rooms on each floor. The front door is on the end of that central hallway, so it's on the side of the house. And this outside door only leads onto the side porch, which we call a piazza. The piazza is always on the south or the west side of the house because there it's able to help block the afternoon sun to create a little bit of shade, as well as collect ocean winds as they blow down the street. We're home. Great house.
Let's go inside one.
There's 6 house museums that you could tour.
They got a house museum. You roll the thing. They got like a Nathaniel Russell house. Where they got like original stuff. You can do those if you want to go on those. And they have special garden tours too. Where you can go and see behind these gates and special gardens.
This is creeping fig. Creeping fig is preferred over English ivy because unlike the ivy, it doesn't put its roots in the mortarwork. It takes its nutrients right out of the air and water, and you can prune it back so it has this carpeted look. And of course on our left, the Charleston Harbor. Around here, we like to say that the Charleston Harbor is where the Ashley River comes together with the Cooper River to form the Atlantic Ocean. Straight out to the left, you'll see Castle Pinckney. You see it just behind that boat there. Just at the end of the southern wharf. Hike, that's an 1809 first-tier American fortification built to protect the harbor against Spanish and French invaders coming by sea. So about behind Castle Pinckney is Sullivan's Island. That's where more slaves entered North America than anywhere else. About 40% of all the slaves that came into this continent came in through the port of Sullivan's, or the port of Charleston on Sullivan's Island. They're having a small regatta sunfish out here. Seawall was completed in 1823. That's when we started getting these houses, 1830s and 40s. This White House right here during Hurricane Hugo in 1989, people tried to ride out the storm by moving all their furniture up to the second and the third floor. They were woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of their dogs swimming in 8 feet of water on the first floor. 20 feet of water came over the seawall during Hurricane Hugo. Hugo did $2.6 billion worth of damage to South Carolina. Do you remember that?
Yeah, we were here for them.
I was what was it, 89?
89, yep. Hello.
We didn't write it down. We were in.
This is an Italian Renaissance revival. These piazzas were added after the house was completed. Very atypical of what you see around town. In 1942, this was the Offices of Naval Intelligence. One of those offices was held by a 23-year-old naval ensign named John Fitzgerald Kennedy. He was sent here by his dad, Joe Kennedy, who was senator at the time, because he'd been seeing a girl named Inga Arvad, who was suspected of being a German spy. 1942, World War II is going on. Oh, Inga Arvad was a Dutch beauty queen, and she had interviewed Adolf Hitler 3 times in the 1930s.
Wow.
Even escorted him to the 1936 Summer Olympic Games. In 1942, she was JFK's girlfriend. So he came down here. His dad was hoping they'd stop seeing one another, but that didn't work. They checked into the Fort Sumter House Inn at the end of the peninsula down here in December of 1942. The FBI was following them. J. Edgar Hoover actually bugged the room. And on the transcript, you could hear JFK saying to Inga Arvad, "This is between me and you and whoever might be listening." They knew the FBI was on to them. The FBI actually followed them up and down King Street on their shopping sprees. And it turns out that Inga Arvad wasn't a spy. But her affiliation with Adolf Hitler plagued her professional career for the rest of her life. This is the Edmonston Alston House, and this is one of the 6 house museums that you could tour. The cast iron balcony might remind you a little bit of New Orleans. The commander of Charleston during the Civil War was Pierre Gustave Toutant Beauregard, known as the Little Creole. He ordered those first shots in the Civil War on April 12, 1861. And then he watched from the second floor piazza of this house.
People live here?
No, it's a house museum that you could tour.
Oh,
In a bed and breakfast in the old Carriage house. The Carriage house in the back today, a bed and breakfast. These people are sitting on a joggling board. Be careful, you might fall in love.
He says too late.
See, what you do is you start bouncing on that from either end as you bounce further and further.
Oh, and they're
You
wrong.
sink towards the middle until you're right next to one another.
Wow.
And then when you're touching, you're supposed to ask your girlfriend to marry you.
Oh.
Has he done that yet? Yes. She said yes. This is the newest house on the block, built in 1920. The Italian cypress trees are going to be removed. That's from Hurricane Matthew. Too bad. A hurricane in 1910 is what destroyed the old property, and that's why it was built in 1920. Look to your left and you'll see Fort Sumter about 3.5 miles out. That was the target of the first shots of the Civil War. They came from Fort Johnson across the Ashley River on James Island. For the entirety of the Civil War, every single fort in the Charleston Harbor was controlled by the Confederacy. Step up! It wasn't until Sherman's troops came through in February of 1865 that the Confederates finally left the Charleston Harbor. Who? Remember the big earthquake, 1886?
Yeah.
Well, this house used to have 3 giant columns in this front portico here, made in the Tower of the Winds column style. They came tumbling down because of that earthquake. And the top half of one of these columns actually landed in the side yard and plugged underneath the ground until a hurricane uprooted a tree there in 1950. It exposed that that column had been buried there for 64 years.
Wow.
Now, if you look in the window, you can see they have their permits because they're going to rebuild those columns this year, 130 years after they came down. That's going to be cool. So the next time you're here,
Wow.
look for those columns. It's going to look great. I bet you they do a great job.
How do they restore that? Off the pictures and things from them?
Yeah, well, there's plenty of other examples around. It's pretty state of the art these
It
days.
has like a rope around the door. That's to let you know that was like originally a merchant.
A sea merchant, yeah. That nautical rope trim showing a sea merchant built this house. It was actually William Roper who founded Roper Hospital. That's the first teaching hospital in North America. The last thing the Confederacy did when they left town on February 18th, 1865 is they exploded the cannons that were mounted down at the end of the block. When they did that, a 500-pound piece of a gun flew over these first 2 houses and lodged itself in the attic upstairs of this house, and it's still up there today. A 500-pound fragment of a cannon from the Civil War.
Oh, wow.
Let me tell you that story again.
Yeah.
The last thing that the Confederacy did when they left town on February 18th, 1865, the day before Sherman's troops burned Columbia, is they exploded the cannons that were mounted down here at White Point Gardens so the Yankees wouldn't use them against them. When that happened, a 500-pound piece of a gun flew over the first 2 houses and landed in the attic of this house where it still is today.
Do they show it?
No, it's a private house. You'd have to know them. You'd have to know them. I've never been up there
I don't
either.
even know their names. I get to know them.
I don't know who it was, but it was originally William Roper's house, founder of Roper Hospital. Step up.
It might be out north somewhere. This is probably just like a vacation home.
How about this one? Dr. Palmer's house. Dr. Palmer was a dentist in the 1950s. He used to have parties for over 500 people on New Year's Eve on the piazzas here. He actually painted the house this color because a servant of his asked him to. Dr. Palmer, will you please paint the house pink? He would tell his friends that he painted the house this color though because he was a dentist and that's the color of healthy gums.
And that was like the kitchen house?
That was the kitchen house back there. That was a bed and breakfast since 1977 until this summer when it sold for $7.5 million.
Now it's a private residence.
Well, they haven't moved in yet. I don't know what they're going to do with it. They've been just emptying it out, cleaning it out for the last couple weeks.
Wow.
This is White Point Gardens. The White Point at the end of the peninsula with oyster beds. You can still see oyster shells mixed in with the sand around the path. These live oak trees are about 150 years old. In the shipbuilding era, live oak was the preferred wood for building ships. Because you can build any part of a ship with this tree, the wood is very hard. That's what was preferred. Gee, back then they tried to build one ship out of every live oak tree, and they could do that. It's a pretty good ratio. Just imagine each one of these trees a different boat. It's impressive. Step up! Yep, yep, yep. Good job. This is the Villa Margherita, built in 1890 by Andrew Simmons, the founder of the First National Bank. He's building it for his new bride, Daisy Bro, who was about 40 years younger than he was. Daisy Bro, New Orleans. That's a real Southern name, right? B-R-E-A-U-X. In 1909, Andrew Simmons died, and Daisy Bro turned this into the Villa Margherita, a bed and breakfast whose guests in the 1920s included Alexander Graham Bell, Henry Ford, Teddy Roosevelt, FDR. They all stayed here. And they used to serve Diamondback tortoise soup for $25 a bowl. Step up. It's a great house with the Corinthian columns with the Greek honeysuckle pinning back off the post. That's the third order of Greek columns. Yep. Up, 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 up. Good job. If I had Aladdin's lamp, I'd make a wish, and here's where I'd be. Nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina in the morning. With the morning glory, whispering many stories. I know you're saying, spare me. I want to hear once more, once more. Nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina in the morning. Good job, Aladdin. Oh wait, is that on perfect?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, both sections.
Put a clip of that up on TripAdvisor. We're having fun.
Me too.
Big live oaks. These are huge live oaks. You see on the branches here? You see the branches of these live oaks have a fern growing on them. That's a bromelia known as resurrection fern. Every time it rains, it resurrects. It only takes about 45 minutes and it comes back to life, and it's this green, healthy, luxurious looking fern. You see it? As it dries out, it becomes dormant, goes back into the bark. But the next time it rains, it'll resurrect again in another 45 minutes. That's all it takes. It's pretty cool. Watch for that if it rains this weekend. This is 2 Meeting Street Inn. It's been a bed and breakfast for over 50 years. It was built in 1892 and Warren Carrington married Martha Williams. The night before their wedding, Martha's father left a note on a satin pillow with $75,000 in British sterling that said, "Build the house of your dreams, love, Dad." Queen Anne style Victorian with the circles and the arches. Martha Williams and Warren Carrington went on a 2-year honeymoon. First they traveled North America for a year, and then they traveled Europe for a year. When they came back from Europe, Martha said, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, I want to live in Paris now." And Dad said, "Martha, I built you a house in Charleston, dear. You can live in Charleston." Well, as a form of compromise, Dad helped her build the Arc de Triomphe on the roof of the house. You see that famous French landmark up there? We'll just bring Paris to you, Martha.
Oh, crazy.
In 1929, Patrick Calhoun lost everything in the New York Stock Exchange on Black Thursday. He was seen selling his personal belongings and furniture from the front steps of his house in the late 1929, early 1930. After that, the house fell into disrepair and passed through several people's hands until eventually the city of Charleston was ready to condemn it in 1970. In 1974, the city of Charleston put this house up for auction, and it sold for $200,000.
What?
Don't you wish you were here that day?
Yeah.
Step up.
We had
I
200,000 to put
Right,
down that
right,
day.
yeah.
Any other day, yeah.
I would have ran
wanted
to the
it.
bank.
I got no 200,000 a day, but that day.
Oh my.
The guy that bought it put $5 million of renovations into it.
Wow.
Today it's worth much more. This is Thomas Hayward Jr.'s house. He built it in 1803 for himself. He also signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776. This is made of South Carolina gray bricks with little black spots in them. On the end of the patio, or the balcony here, chevaux de frise, it's the first barbed wire. And it was put there to keep dangerous slaves from climbing onto your property. The threat of a slave rebellion was always very real in the 19th century. The population of Charleston in 1860, at the beginning of the Civil War, was 78% black. That meant if you were a white landowner here, you were outnumbered by your servants almost 4 to 1. There were a lot of dangerous slaves by that point that wanted to rebel, so you have to do different things to protect yourself.
Really?
This is a Charleston single house, just 1 room wide. If you open up windows downstairs on this side, then you open up windows upstairs in the back, it creates a draft, which will push all the hot air up and out of the house. That's one of the ways you keep the house cool in the summertime.
Pressure washing.
The house on the left, number 35, built in 1723. That makes it 12 years older than Savannah. Hip. Oh! This house is a Charleston double house because it's 2 rooms wide, 2 by 2, or double pile, so 4 rooms on each floor, with the same central hallway as the single house. This was the home of the last royal governor who lived here in 1775 before he was run off by the Patriots. He literally had to sneak out of the back door in the middle of the night and onto a boat that was waiting for him across the Charleston Harbor. See how the house is slightly angled to the road here? That helps it catch those ocean winds as they whip down the street. Notice the beautiful gardens and the kitchen house in the back, also the carriage house with the garage doors. Japanese maples are turning red this time of year. This is a cabbage palm. The palmetto is our state tree. Besides moving houses on palmetto logs in the 19th century, they also built about a dozen houses on South Battery that are built on floating foundations of these palmetto logs. They're crisscrossed underneath the house, and they literally float in a little bit of plush mud, sand, and water. So when those hurricane gale force winds hit the floating foundations, or the great earthquake of 1886, they just sway a little bit on their foundations. They don't sustain as much damage as their neighbors.
What's that red bell right there on that house right there?
Fire bell. This is the First Baptist Church complex. The First Baptist Church moved here from Boston in 1682. We can see more earthquake rods. Yep. Whoa! Yep. This is Nathaniel Russell's house, and this is the one your son suggested that you go see. He wasn't lying to you. This is my favorite house in Tula. Everything's labeled in the garden, so if you like the flowers and the horticulture, that's a good place to start. You can also see the old carriage house and the servant quarters in the back, also the old kitchen house. Nathaniel Russell moved here in 1808. You can see his initials on the wrought iron balcony in the front. This house is best known for its free-flying antebellum stairway, which uses a cantilever system so that each step is balanced on the weight of the one below it, and it only attaches to the house where you step on and off of the stairs. It's 3 stories tall, otherwise free-flying. Doesn't attach to anything. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So each step has a cantilever, so each step is, you know, hope. Yeah. As you step up the stairs, the weight of the bottom stairs is what holds it in place. Pretty cool. This house is set up like dinner is going to be served in 1830. Dinner would take place about 3:30 in the afternoon. So about 3 o'clock, that meant the slaves had to bring the food in from the kitchen house in the back. And it would often be followed by dogs that would bark and beg for scraps as they walked through the yard. Eventually, a wise slave realized if she fried up a little cornmeal, she could throw it to the dogs, and that's how we get hush puppies today. Hush puppies. That's true. Oh, good. This is the first Scots Presbyterian church, built in 1731. The Scottish were known for being good soldiers. They're also good golfers, and they brought the game of golf. In 1786, the first golf course in North America was where the College of Charleston is today. It was called Charleston Green. They never had more than 6 golf holes, so they came at one green from 6 different directions. They closed in 1801. It was the first, and golf is still a big deal around here, depending on who you ask.
Now those things are boarded up because I think they donated their bells for the metal.
What?
The very top.
Are they what?
You see, I guess that was the original bell towers. They had some bells on those towers.
Yeah.
And I guess they
Probably
had used that
so.
for the metal, for the war.
They might have, yeah, they sometimes melted some of the church bells for artillery. Yeah, notice the wrought iron weather vanes at the top of the tower. This is really impressive. Up! G. G. Oh yeah. Yeah, Aladdin's been very good to me all day. This is Trad Street, and it's one of the first roads in town. It's only a mile long. It's the only road that you can see all the way to the Ashley River behind us and the Cooper River in front of us. It's named after Robert Trad, who was the first British baby born in the Low Country. This house is for sale. When you buy it, you get the kitchen house and the servants' quarters in the back too. Up!
Hey, Richard, get on there. Hang out in the servants' quarters, I guess.
You can Zillow this house. I think it's listed for $1.8 million. Oh, this was Alicia Red's house. She played India Wilkes in the movie Gone with the Wind. She died in 2009. She's almost 100 years old. This is where they filmed the first scene of the movie The Patriot. And to do that, they took out all the street signs and covered the roads with dirt. The only thing left was this yellow fire hydrant. If you watch The Patriot again, you'll see there's a lady in a hoop skirt standing in the same spot for the entire scene. That's where the fire hydrant went. Some of the oldest houses in town are on Trad Street. Here's a fire tag. That's how your fire insurance company knows whether to put the fire out. There's another one coming up right here too. Careful, there's a lot of ghosts around here this time of year.
When they renovate, they have to renovate according to the...
Board of Architectural Review. They review everything.
So basically, they try to keep it history, you know.
Yeah, they don't want... you can't change anything that's visible from a public right-of-way. Ha!
But you can change it kind of...
Yeah, you can paint different colors, and sometimes what's on the inside. No, they might sometimes tell you what you can do there too, because they don't want you to take out any of that old 1700s. You see all these signs in the windows? That's the permit from the Board of Architectural Review. That means they're going to do some work. Stucco. See, here's an example. This is stucco covering brick. See, these are really old bricks, but the stucco has helped protect them the whole time. And in the 19th century, this wouldn't have been acceptable. Your neighbors would have told you to fix that. But today, they leave it like that so you can see what used to be here. It's old slave-made bricks with the black spots in them. Made up near Columbia. How's it going, guys? A lot of really old houses on the right. This one's 1759. Thomas Legree's house. You can see the earthquake rods and those old bricks too. Also on the inside you see pocket shutters that fold into the wall. This one 1805. You can see the Carriage house back there. Tower of the Winds columns over the front door here. That's what they're going to put on that house down on the battery that they're going to replace those big columns. Tower of the Winds like that. At least that should be what they do, because I know that's what used to be there. These are Victorian houses on this side of the road from the 19th century. By the way, we do more weddings in Charleston than any place outside of Las Vegas. "75 years is the magic number, and if you're a house or a church or a business or a sidewalk or a tree, if you've been here for 75 years, you can't be removed or altered. That means that sometimes the tree's roots will lift up the pavements on the sidewalks, and you'll find out very quickly what we refer to as the Charleston trip. Watch your step. See this? They get lifted up. Next thing, I saw a lady fall earlier today. I thought she broke her arm. Man, it sounded like somebody slapped her across the face.
I have them a video of people falling.
Man, it's a common occurrence.
Work on that.
Yep.
Pressure watch videos.
Hello. This advertisement has been here for 75 years, so today it's protected. If you look closely, you might be able to guess what used to be here. That's excellent. This was a hat maker, a haberdashery. There's 18 hats in that picture, and you guessed it very quickly. I'm usually saying, no, it's not the Peanut Man, and it wasn't a toy store.
The man looks like he got on some Beats headphones. His body's like an upside down top hat.
That guy's going to be there because he's protected, so don't expect it to ever change.
Never noticed that either.
They were just filming. What film were they
They
filming?
haven't given him a name yet?
They were filming a film here this weekend.
I don't know what it was called. I heard,
But it was about the Cooper River Bridge Run, because they
Yeah.
had like the whole little
That's
setup
right.
with Cooper River Bridge Run. They had the little flags. They had this whole street blocked off. They had cops and stuff.
Look to your left and you'll see St. Michael's Anglican Church, the oldest church structure in town. It's finished in 1764. It was also painted black during the Civil War to make it a harder target for Yankee cannons at night.
That's the oldest church here?
Yep, oldest church
They
structure.
painted that top black, you said?
They painted the whole thing black.
How about the Emmanuel Church? How long is that been?
1819.
1890?
The Mother Emanuel AME Church, African Methodist Episcopal. That's where Denmark Vesey was the pastor. He planned a slave rebellion in 1822. Over 6,000 slaves were recruited to rebel. Denmark Vesey was a freedman who bought his freedom in 1799 for $500 after winning a lottery worth $1,500. He spent 23 years as a carpenter in the early 19th century before eventually being convicted of planning the slave rebellion. And he was executed in 1823, along with 35 other slaves. 4 white men were part of the conspiracy, and they were thrown in jail for a year. It's a big deal. I mentioned earlier the threat of the slave rebellion was always very real.
Everything's coming down. Everything down.
If you look to the right, you'll see the Pink House, which is the oldest house in Charleston. It was built between 1694 and 1712. It's made of Bermuda stone, which means it was built by people from the Caribbean, and it's likely that they were free people of color. In the 17th century, there were a lot of free people of color that had married Englishmen or Irishmen, and they could move here to Charleston initially.
What street is that?
That's Chalmers. This building on the left is the oldest building, the first building in North America built specifically for the performing arts. It's known as the Dock Street Theater. In 1835, it became the Planters Hotel. And in 1936, they changed back to the Dock Street Theater. So this is been a performing arts place again for the last 80 years. On the right here is the French Huguenot Church. Built in 1840, the last French Huguenot church was exploded in 1796. They were trying to stop that great fire of that year from spreading. And blowing up the church didn't help. Step up. St. Philip's steeple was on fire in that fire in 1796. And a slave named Will actually climbed up on the steeple and threw burning shingles off of the church and saved it from destruction. Will was later rewarded his freedom. The East Graveyard at St. Philip's is where Edward Rutledge is buried. He signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Charles Pinckney is also buried in the East Graveyard. He signed the United States Constitution in 1787. The West Cemetery is where John C. Calhoun is buried. He was our 7th Vice President. John C. Calhoun was also the first Vice President ever to resign. He was under Andrew Jackson, who's on a $20 bill. He was never really known for being a very nice guy. Oh, there's John C. Calhoun. During the nullification crisis in the 1820s in the American Senate, he was known as the Great Nullifier. The state of Massachusetts was trying to collect money for the Revolutionary War bill. Of course, John C. Calhoun said, we fought Revolutionary War battles in our state, and we shouldn't have to pay Massachusetts' bill. And so they were nullifying the federal tariffs, refusing to pay them, and he was the Great Nullifier. Hike. As long as the gates are open, yeah. These gates are one of 2 sets of pre-Revolutionary War gates. They date back to the early 1700s. Oldest gates in town. Step up. Right here is Colonel William Rhett, who was the scourge of the pirates. And next to him was Pierce Butler. He signed the Constitution. When Margaret Mitchell was writing Gone with the Wind, she walked through the West Cemetery of St. Philip's and saw Rhett next to Butler, and that's how she got the name of her main character. There's a lot of ghosts in St. Philip's graveyard. But just to be clear, St. Philip's has put that sign there. It says that the only ghost at St. Philip's is the Holy Ghost. So if you don't know, now you know. Six o'clock bells in St. Philip's. They ring every hour, every day. Black Fedora Comedy Mystery Theater is a fun place to go at night. It'll make you laugh. It'll also make you part of the show. You can get just about any kind of jerky you want here. You can buy alligator jerky, raccoon jerky, beaver jerky.
Right. Draw the line of beaver.
Yep. Step G. The old slave market opens up at 9 o'clock and shuts down every day at 6. It's called the old slave market because slaves could run the vending stations inside the market. They could also come do the shopping here. Slaves were never sold and traded here. That would happen over on East Bay Street near the Vendu Inn. Vendu is the French word for auction. No, you have to go to Vendu. And that was there, not now. This is a fish market in the middle, a meat market down by Meeting Street. Produce on this end. If you look at a mural, you'll see what they used to sell here. Just about anything that comes out of the sea. These old slave-made bricks are very soft, and if you touch them, peel away. Yep, yep, yep. Yep, yep. Anytime it rains at high tide, we get 2 or 3 feet of water down here, flood water. The lowest parts of the market are 1 or 2 feet below sea level. You can see the stains on the bottom of the bricks where the flood water is regularly rise. Hurricane Hugo left over 12 feet of water sloshed around the market. Hugo is a big deal, $2.6 billion in damage. Gee! Thanks for coming on live with me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed.
Very nice. Thank you.